Mindful indifference is a superpower. We grow up in a world where caring too much is considered a commendable quality. We are taught to care about other people's opinions, to need social approval, and to react to every compliment or criticism as if our lives depended on it. But the truth is, true freedom comes when you learn to be mindfully indifferent. This doesn't mean you become cold or insensitive. On the contrary, mindful indifference is a form of choice. You choose what's worth caring about and what's not. It's the art of prioritizing. Because not every battle is worth fighting, not every word is worth listening to, and certainly not every judgment is worth a reaction. Have you ever asked yourself, what's worrying you today, will it still matter in 5 years? It could be a small criticism, a negative look, or a rejection. These things may occupy your mind today, but they will most likely be meaningless in a few months or even a few days. Mindful indifference is the ability to notice this in the moment. Interestingly, when you stop reacting to every little inconvenience, you begin to take back control of your life. You are no longer a slave to your immediate emotions, nor a puppet of social reactions. You become a leader, quietly but powerfully. If you pay attention, you will notice that the people you truly admire, be they leaders, artists, or successful people in life, are not people pleasers. They are not desperately seeking validation. They are calm, steady, and almost unmoved by the storm. It is this selective indifference that makes them so attractive. Mentally strong people are not people who are immune to criticism. They are people who are immune to criticism. They don't react violently. They don't need to respond or explain everything. And because of that, they have the energy, focus, and time to do great things. So how do you cultivate this superpower? First, evaluate your reactions. Whenever something makes you angry, upset, or anxious, stop and ask, is this really worth it? You'll be surprised to find that most of your reactions are automatic and unnecessary. Second, set clear priorities. When you know what's important, for example, inner peace, long-term goals, family, mental health, the unimportant stuff automatically falls away. You don't have time to react to meaningless gossip or anonymous attacks. Remember, true power lies not in always being liked, but in not being crushed by rejection. Mindful indifference does not make you cold, it makes you wise. You still care, but you care selectively, intelligently. Finally, accept that no one can please everyone. Everyone has their own perspective, standards, and biases. If you live to please others, you will lose yourself. But if you live true to your values, you will attract the right people. Mindful indifference is not an escape. It is facing life with a calm mind, not caught up in the trivialities. When you live like that, you are not only stronger but also freer. And that freedom is a superpower that no one can take away. Silence is the ultimate power. In an increasingly noisy world, where everyone is trying to say more, post more, prove more, silence has suddenly become a special form of power. It is no longer just a space between two sentences, but a subtle weapon in conversations, relationships, and even in everyday life. We live in an age where people are afraid of silence. A few seconds of silence in a conversation can make others feel confused, anxious, or insecure. They rush to fill the gap with explanations, justifications, or even nonsense, just to avoid hearing that silence. But that is where you have power. The strongest people don't talk much. They don't need to prove themselves right, nor do they need to react immediately to every external stimulus. Instead, they listen, observe, analyze. Their silence is not a lack, it is control. Control of themselves and control of the situation. In any conversation, the person who speaks less often has more power. They don't reveal too much, nor do they let others know what they are thinking. And that creates a gap, a mystery that makes the other person ask questions, guess, make more effort to understand. And in human psychology, mystery always goes hand in hand with charm and power. Notice, the most powerful people in the room are not the ones who talk the loudest. They don't have to prove themselves through words. They prove themselves through their composure, through their gaze, through their ability to maintain silence in moments when everyone else wants to speak. One of the most powerful aspects of silence is its ability to make others express themselves. When you don't rush to respond, the other person feels compelled to continue talking. And the more you talk, the more likely they are to reveal their true thoughts, feelings, and vulnerabilities. You're not doing anything, you're simply keeping quiet, observing. However, silence is not passive. It requires a high level of initiative. You need to have the discipline to not say what you're thinking, especially in moments of heightened emotion, when you're angry, offended, or agitated. It's at those moments that if you can keep quiet, you've won. It's not the strong who are silent. It's the silent who are truly strong. Silence is a deliberate choice. It's a form of strength. It sends the message, I don't have anything to prove. And in a world where everyone is shouting for attention, the person who chooses to stay silent is the one who makes others listen. To cultivate this power, you can start with these simple steps. Practice restraint in everyday conversations. Don't rush to react. Stop, take a breath, and choose to say nothing for a few seconds. You'll find yourself in better control of the situation. Observe more, speak less. Instead of interrupting, pay attention to the body language and emotions behind the other person's words. Silence makes you a better observer. Accept silence in awkward moments. When someone is waiting for you to respond, you have the right to not respond right away. This creates a subtle power distance that you can exploit. In conflict, keep silent. Not to avoid but to control. When you keep your cool, you don't say things you regret. That's a sign of inner strength. Finally, remember, silence is not the absence of a voice, it is the presence of intelligence, discipline, and character. The more you control your words, the more you control your energy, your relationships, and even the world around you. Silence is the ultimate power move, not because it overwhelms others, but because it makes you uncontrollable. Learn to let go of what you cannot control. Life always works out in its own way, sometimes smoothly, sometimes unpredictably. But most of the suffering we experience does not come from the circumstances themselves, but from clinging to things that are beyond our control. Outcomes, expectations, other people's feelings, or even the future that has not yet happened. We often believe that if we try hard enough, worry enough, control enough, then everything will turn out the way we want. But the truth is, there are things that will happen no matter how well you prepare, no matter how much you worry. And the only thing you can do in those moments is to let go. Letting go does not mean giving up. It does not mean you stop trying, stop caring, or accept a life of complacency. Letting go simply means shifting your focus from what you cannot control to what you can control. It is an act of wisdom, not weakness. Think about all the things you have ever worried about, what others think of you, who will leave, what will happen in the future, how the past can come back to hurt you. How many of them are actually in your control? How many have you spent hours, days, thinking about only to realize that you can't change anything? True mental strength comes not from being able to control everything, but from letting go of what you can't control. Strong people are not those who win in every situation. They are those who remain calm in the face of uncertainty, who keep moving forward even when the outcome is not as expected. They understand that the more they cling to expectations, the more vulnerable they become. Expectations, if not adjusted, are a double-edged sword. On one side is hope, on the other is deep disappointment. Most people waste energy trying to force results. Getting others to change, holding on to broken relationships, struggling to fix the irreparable. But the paradox is, the tighter you hold on, the more you lose control. It's like holding sand in your hand, the tighter you hold on, the more it falls. But if you let go properly, the sand will stay. The same is true of life. The key to letting go is awareness. You can't let go until you realize what you're holding on to and why. Awareness is the first step to letting go. And then practice, because detachment is a skill, not a reflex. It needs to be practiced every day. You can start with small steps. When something doesn't go your way, ask yourself, is this within my control? If not, take a deep breath and let it go like a cloud passing by. Shift your attention to what you can do, your actions, your attitudes, your reactions. Don't waste your energy on what you can't change. Don't spend your precious mind worrying about things that are beyond your control. Shift your energy to things that move you forward, a small action, a positive thought, an adjustment in your attitude. Understand that detachment is not the same as indifference. A person who is indifferent doesn't care. A person who lets go still cares, but chooses to maintain inner peace rather than be swept away by the storms of life. Clinging makes you weak. Letting go sets you free. And the moment you learn to let go of what you can't control, you become untouchable. Not because the world stops challenging you, but because you stop letting the world control your emotions and your mind. That's when you truly take control of your life. Mastering your mind to be unaffected. In a world where everything is trying to get your attention, from negative news to social media, to what other people say, the ability to be unaffected by external events is one of the most valuable superpowers you can develop. And like all superpowers, it comes from training, not from birth. Every little comment, every temporary setback, if it bothers you, you are giving away your power. Every time you react immediately when someone criticizes you, when something doesn't go your way, you are telling the world, I am easily manipulated. But you don't have to live that way. True power doesn't come from controlling others, but from mastering yourself, mastering your mind, your emotions, your reactions. Imagine a different version of yourself. One that doesn't get caught up in judgment, doesn't overthink a small mistake, doesn't get emotional over a minor incident. That version isn't a cold person, but a person who is in control. He or she doesn't get caught up in the waves of emotions, but chooses to act consciously. The most resilient people don't have fewer problems, but they know how to respond to them in a calm way. They don't get caught up in the small stuff. They understand that their energy is limited and must be used wisely. Mastering your mind isn't about suppressing your emotions. It's not about pretending you don't feel anything. It's about knowing what you're feeling but not letting it dictate your actions. That's the line between being impulsive and being mature. Every time you feel offended and want to respond immediately, you have a choice: give away power or keep it. And the great thing is, you can practice keeping that power every day. Start by observing yourself. Observe when you feel upset, when you react strongly. Don't try to change immediately. Just see. Awareness is the first step to freedom. Because you can't control what you don't notice. Next, stop acting like a victim of your emotions. Instead of letting a negative comment ruin your whole day, see it as a test, an opportunity to demonstrate your inner stability. Every time you stay calm in the face of provocation, you are strengthening your mental muscle. Every time you stay silent when you want to scream, you are mastering yourself. Every time you say to yourself, "I choose not to be affected," you are one step closer to true freedom. Don't underestimate the power of an unshakable attitude. When you reach this state, others will start to see you differently. No one can control you with words anymore. No one can force you to react the way they want. You are no longer a puppet of circumstances. You are the one who controls everything from within. This doesn't come in a day, a week, or a month. It comes after consistent practice, through seemingly small situations. One time controlling your emotions is one brick. Many bricks will build an inner fortress. And then there will come a time when you stand in the midst of chaos, in the midst of noise, criticism, pressure, and your mind remains as calm as a lake. You see everything without reacting hastily. You hear everything without being pulled away. You choose to act, not react. Once you master this skill, no one and nothing can control you anymore. You don't need approval. You are not driven by rejection. You are your own center, solid, clear, inviolable. And that is true freedom. Mastering the "nothing disturbs me" mindset. Modern life is a constant barrage of distractions. Information noise, conflicting opinions from others, social expectations, everyday frustrations, and unexpected obstacles. In such a world, the ability to maintain a calm mind, unshaken by chaos, is one of the most valuable and powerful life skills you can possess. And the "nothing disturbs me" mindset is at the heart of that peace and power. Imagine walking through a storm. The wind is blowing, the rain is pouring, everything around you is trying to knock you down, but you keep walking, your back straight, your gaze unwavering, your breathing steady. That is the image of someone who has mastered their mind. They are not immune to hardship, but they are not defeated by it. That power comes not from avoiding emotions or circumstances, but from emotionally detaching yourself from external factors. When you let circumstances dictate your mood, you become a puppet of forces you cannot control. But when you learn to observe rather than react, you take back control and become the true master of your life. The world tends to respect people who remain calm in chaos, who do not collapse under pressure, who do not get caught up in arguments or instant emotions. The most influential people in history, from great leaders to sages, were not people who reacted impulsively to every criticism. They acted with calmness, with purpose, and with a cool head. Their power was not in loud words but in their weighty presence. The key lesson here is, thinking precedes action. Most people react emotionally to the world, that is, they act before they think. They are quick to anger, easily upset, easily hurt, and therefore easily manipulated. But when you cultivate a "nothing bothers me" mindset, you learn to pause before reacting, assess the situation, and choose your response with intention. When someone insults you in public and you just smile and walk away, you don't lose, you win. You take away the other person's power. You don't let them define your emotions. That's bravery. Failure? People with this mindset don't internalize failure as a wound. They see it as data, a signal to adjust, learn, and adapt. They move forward without the emotional baggage. So how do you build this mindset? Practice your mind every day. Start small. When someone upsets you, stop, take a deep breath, and ask, is my response really necessary? Ask the bigger question. Does this have any impact on my long-term goals? If not, let it go. Practice visualization. Every day, visualize yourself as unshaken, walking with calm, clear eyes, not caught up in the chaos around you. This image will sink into your subconscious and shape your responses over time. Develop a clear purpose. When you know where you are headed, the little things no longer attract your attention. You no longer have time to react to every unpleasant word or gesture. You are busy pursuing the larger goal. Most importantly, understand that detachment is not indifference or coldness, but a refusal to allow the outside world to dictate your inner state. It is the ultimate form of freedom. Once you no longer identify with failures, with criticism, with unpleasant situations, you become invulnerable. The world belongs to those who are in control of themselves. Not those who scream for respect, but those who command it by their quiet, steady presence. They don't need to say much, they don't need to prove anything. They simply are, and that's enough. The nothing bothers me mindset is not a denial of emotions. It's the ability to control your emotions, consciously choose your responses, and hold your inner peace like a fortress. And when you live like that, nothing can touch you, unless you let it. Dealing with criticism. Discovering the power of mental resilience. Criticism is an inevitable part of life. No matter who you are, what you do, or what you achieve in life, there will always be people who are willing to criticize, judge, or criticize you. However, what matters is not the amount of criticism you receive, but how you handle it. How you deal with criticism determines your mental strength and maturity. The strongest people do not let criticism shake them. They know how to evaluate criticism with a clear mind, instead of letting their emotions control their response. For them, criticism is not something to worry about or fear, but an opportunity to grow and learn. They understand that only when you filter criticism with reason can you use it effectively to improve. Two types of criticism: constructive and destructive. Not all criticism is valuable. In fact, there are two types of criticism that you will encounter throughout your life. Constructive criticism. This is positive feedback and comments that are intended to help you improve or grow. This criticism may be painful at first, but when viewed properly, it can be an opportunity for you to reflect on yourself and grow. Destructive criticism. This is unfounded criticism that is intended to put you down or hurt you without adding any value. The people who give this criticism are usually people who have never done what you are doing, and they do not understand the process you have gone through. Criticism is a test of emotional resilience. Criticism can be a test of your emotional resilience. When you are criticized, your first reaction is often to feel hurt, angry, or embarrassed. However, strength comes not from avoiding these emotions, but from being able to control and move past them. You will not be able to avoid negative emotions, but you can learn to not let them control you. One way to develop this ability is to practice detachment, not letting your emotions take over when you receive criticism. Instead, step away from the situation, observe it from a different perspective, and evaluate the criticism objectively. The questions to ask yourself are: is this criticism valid? Is it true? Is there anything I could improve on? If the answer is yes, take the lesson and move on. If the answer is no, let it go and move on. Practice confidence and resilience. One of the most important factors in dealing with criticism is self-confidence. Strong people do not react impulsively to criticism. They do not let themselves be swayed by negative comments from others, because they understand their own worth and the path they are on. They believe in their abilities and know that everyone has their own limitations and strengths. When you have strong self-confidence, you do not feel the need to justify or explain every criticism. You understand that not every assessment is a true reflection of you, and you do not always need to respond to every criticism. True confidence is not about showing off or showing off, but about being able to stand your ground and move forward without being distracted by outside factors. The ability to listen and evaluate rationally. Another important skill to have in dealing with criticism effectively is the ability to listen and evaluate rationally. When you receive criticism, don't be quick to react or feel attacked. Instead, listen carefully to what the other person has to say, and consider whether there is anything in it that can help you improve. Sometimes criticism can be painful, but if you are sober enough to analyze and filter the information, you will realize that it can actually be an opportunity for you to improve. Confidence and true indifference. One of the most powerful approaches to dealing with criticism is calm indifference. When you respond to criticism with a calm attitude, you show the world that your confidence is unshakable. You don't have to prove yourself or fight for what others say. In fact, indifference is not indifference, but choosing not to allow yourself to be swept away by the emotions and judgments of others. You are in control of your inner peace, and that is true power. Conclusion. Criticism is inevitable in life, but how you deal with it determines your strength. Practice evaluating criticism rationally, maintain self-confidence, and learn to detach emotionally from external circumstances. Train yourself to stay calm. In today's chaotic world, where news, social media, and relationships are constantly pulling us into an emotional tailspin, Calmness has become a kind of superpower. Not everyone has it, but everyone needs it. Most people live like rudderless boats, drifting with their emotions, reacting on instinct, and letting the outside world dictate their inner state. One harsh word can set them off. One unpleasant situation can ruin their day. But then there are those people who, despite everything going on around them, remain calm. Not because they don't feel it, but because they have trained themselves to control it. Remember, your mind is your battlefield. The enemy isn't out there, it's in every thought, every impulse, every negative emotion that suddenly arises. The strongest people are not those who never think negatively, but those who refuse to let those thoughts control their actions. To do that, you can't just hope to be calmer. You have to train it just like you train your body in the gym. No one has a strong muscle without experiencing resistance, and no one has a strong mind without training. The mind is a muscle. It only becomes resilient when you face a challenge and choose not to react unconsciously. Every time you stay calm when you want to get angry, every time you choose to observe instead of react, every time you pause to breathe before saying something you will regret, you are strengthening that muscle. One of the most important mental habits you can develop is detachment. Detachment doesn't mean indifference or insensitivity. It means you still feel, but you don't let your emotions take over. You don't react on instinct, you respond with purpose. You don't let one little thing ruin your day. You have space between your feelings and your actions, and in that space you have freedom. Imagine you're driving in a downpour. Water is splashing against the windshield, the wind is gusting, you can't change the weather, but you can control the steering wheel. The same goes for your mind. Calmness isn't about eliminating every emotional storm, it's about learning to drive steadily even when it's stormy. Mental strength isn't built in big moments but in the little things every day. When you choose to meditate for 5 minutes instead of picking up your phone. When you take 10 seconds to pause before reacting to something that makes you angry. When you write down your feelings instead of swallowing them or blowing them up. When you choose not to respond to an attack because you understand it does not reflect your true worth. All of that is practice. And practice creates inner stability, something that no one can take away, and that cannot be borrowed from anyone else. Remember, most people are slaves to their emotions. They are pulled along by their moods, the words of others, or circumstances. But those who master their minds master everything else. They rule their lives not by haste but by steadiness. So don't just wish for calmness. Practice calmness. See each challenging moment as an exercise for your mind. Each time you overcome it, you are not just withstanding, you are becoming stronger. Ultimately, calmness is not the absence of emotion. Calmness is the ability to sit with your emotions and not let them run your life. That is a form of wisdom, a form of strength, and above all, it is the foundation for true freedom.